Are you loving Evangelicalish? Follow us to catch all the latest content and encouragement. You can check us out on TikTok by following at Evangelicalish or subscribe on YouTube by searching Evangelicalish. That's Evangelical with an ISH. And don't forget to catch our live streams each and every single Wednesday night on YouTube at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, and 6 Pacific. And now, back to the Evangelicalish podcast.
That's Evangelical with an ish. Now to Paul, Jeremy, and April on this episode of Evangelical-ish.
Welcome into the...
Just a little bit there.
I don't know what it did. It played like an audio and a video, but the video had audio. Listen, there was a lot happening. But
there was a lot going on.
Evangelical-ish.
Oh, and now we're playing it again. That's good.
We're going again. All right. Well, I'm using different equipment on
We'll do it live. We'll do it live.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, good to see everybody tonight. Welcome to the Evangelicalish podcast. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Paul.
And I'm Malynda, sitting in for April.
I love that. So some exciting news. Speaking of the one, the only, the April Ajoy, she will be back on the podcast next week. So we're super excited about that.
Not that we're trying to get rid of Malynda.
No, we like Malynda a lot. We really like Janice a lot too. They have been fantastic guest hosts. We have not missed a beat. And so just added some really great conversation and perspectives to the podcast over the past couple of months. But just like y'all, we certainly have also missed April being around on a regular basis. And so we're super excited that she's going to be back next week as, she gets some other projects done and her family makes some changes and just all of those things. And so, we were glad that she got to take a couple of weeks off. But we are really excited to have her back. So, do us a favor, go to evangelicalish.com. You can follow the community there. There's a community board that you can be a part of, conversations, DMs, things like that. It's $4.99 to join a month, and it just really helps support what we're doing here at the Evangelicalish podcast and with the Evangelicalish community. And so your support is always just so loved. We're super grateful for it. Any chance you get to support us in that way, we're so thankful. Also, go to Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts, leave a 5-star review, write a review, and tell people why they should be listening. So yes, we want Malynda to come back. Michelle says, Malynda, please come back around sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I'm all about that. Which, by the way, Malynda shared a music video that she was a part of with me last week after our show, and y'all should just definitely go and check that out. And so just see all of her work. You can find her at Malynda Hale on all the platforms, and you can see her work there. So,
and I have to say, Malynda, I'm into voices, and you have like the best voice in the world.
The best.
That is a voice like butter.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
It is so good. And the video is so well done.
Thank you.
Extremely powerful. I texted Malynda. She was like, just let me know what you think about this. Like, it seems like we're on similar wavelengths. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I watched it, and I was like, it just hooked me, like, from the very beginning, like the track, just the way it was arranged, everything. And then that smooth, buttery voice was so good.
Oh, thank you so much.
So, all right. I think that does the housekeeping. Let's not have a 20-minute random conversation again this week, as bad as I would like to. So, yeah, Paul, what do you got?
And let's not say that Tina Turner sang R-E-S-P-E-C-T. All right?
Oh my gosh.
That is one of the worst mistakes I've ever made.
And you're the music guy, of course. All right. Our topic this week, and Jeremy came up with the title of "It's Getting Hot in Here." If you know the analogy of the frog in the kettle, that you don't throw a live frog into a boiling kettle, it will jump right out. But if you throw it into cool water in a pot, it will sit there, and then you gently turn the heat up. It will just sit and boil without ever knowing what happened. And sometimes it feels like in our culture, we're a little bit of that frog in the kettle, and things are starting to heat up, But we're a little bit afraid to say, oh, maybe this isn't Germany 1935. You know, we're all afraid to make that analogy. But is it? Are we on the precipice of something bad? Is Christian nationalism something we just rant about, or is it to be feared? And one of the indicators that the heat may very well be turning up is what happened in Florida, book bannings and all of those things. And Malynda, this last week, they got really crazy about banning something that we all think is beautiful.
Yep. Amanda Gorman's poem that she read at the inauguration called The Hill We Climb. And there was only one parent, actually. This is crazy to me that it's one parent, one mom that made the complaint, and that allowed for it to be banned from specific schools. Now, apparently, recently, they've actually just aged up her poem and said that it was only appropriate for middle schools. However, I'm going to read the section that this mom had such offense to, and I want to see what your response is. So this is the section that the mom had a problem with. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. And the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished.
I mean, I've got goosebumps. Like, it's
I mean,
so
those words
good.
are so powerful.
So powerful.
And how you can figure out a way to be offended by it and think that it's indoctrinating children. I can't even formulate my brain to think that way, because that to me is a poem of hope. That's a poem of encouragement and motivation. Like, it's true. The nation isn't broken, but it's just unfinished. We have a lot of work to do. That is a positive thing that we should be teaching our kids. But
Because
instead,
I could make the case that it is broken, so I think it's kind
exactly.
of generous.
She could have gone that route super easy. There's enough data to show that, but she didn't. And so to find that to be offensive and say that it's not appropriate for elementary school kids, I don't get it.
Yeah,
I'm really struggling to see. I mean, did she have to specifically say why it's offensive, or just if a parent says it's offensive, it's out? Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. So in the report, first of all, she pulled a Jeremy. Sorry, I had to, but she said that the poem was written by Oprah Winfrey. I'm sorry. I had to. I don't think I'm ever going to let you live that down, but I had to throw it in there. Anyway, so
I want to publicly apologize once again for a quick, ridiculous mistake on the fly. Okay? Rest in peace, Tina Turner. Okay? It was my fault. I take the blame.
But so going back to the poem, this mom complained about the poem "The Hill We Climb" by Oprah Winfrey, which is like, okay, that's not who the poem is by. Right. And she cited those passages as being, she thought it was inappropriate for children, for elementary school, felt it was indoctrinating, didn't explain why, and they just allowed her to get away with it. And they decided, okay, yeah, it's not appropriate for kids. So we'll just have it be read in middle school or high school, but elementary school kids cannot read this. And I'm still searching for what is inappropriate. Like, I would read that poem to my daughter. She's 3. She may not understand it fully, but I don't see how it's a negative thing.
And Amanda Gorman's reading of that at the inauguration was so powerful. And she was such a fantastic presenter. And you're watching this young woman at a moment that would make me crap my pants, just delivering this amazing thing. I mean, we ought to make every child in America watch that, much less ban it.
Absolutely.
It has. I mean, with the backdrop of everything else that was happening around the time of the inauguration. I mean, we were talking about, and not that it's not still this way, but it was a very hostile environment. I mean, we're coming just off of the back of January 6th, in the midst of pandemic,
First time ever the outgoing president doesn't come to the inauguration of the next.
Yeah, and I mean, so there is a very deep backdrop, especially when you think about all the dynamics that were at play leading up to this inauguration, with the racial tension, the social tension that is happening and is continuing to play out in our country. But you think about those things, and you think about how alive and real the civil rights fight still is. History will look back on this poem as an ancestor in the line of "I Have a Dream." Like they will look at it. They will look at it with the same eyes, I believe, as we step away from this, and hopefully as our country does heal and does begin to develop itself into something very beautiful and loving and accepting and affirming for everyone. I believe that it has that power, it has that language, it has that tenacity to it. But unfortunately, with this kind of behavior, it's only going to continue to get worse, I think.
I completely agree. And I think the other interesting thing about this mom is that she actually is connected with Moms of Liberty, who we know are really leading the charge in a lot of these book bannings and stopping social emotional learning in schools, which is also very, very bizarre.
Bonkers.
And it's absolutely bonkers. Like, you don't want your child to learn empathy. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so, you're like saying, I want to raise, Yeah. But what's so interesting about obviously all of these books being banned and this poem specifically being banned is just that it is a form of censoring when those same people are the biggest advocates for free speech. Which we know they're no strangers to hypocrisy, but that is what's very frustrating for me.
It makes me wonder if it was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white young woman reading the poem, would there be the same issue?
Probably not. I mean,
no.
We'll never know.
Or this woman who apparently believes, well, it was some black woman that maybe it wasn't Oprah, but it was some black woman. You know?
Well, that was like, there was a poll, I forget where I read this, kind of continuing to draw that line back to like MLK. There was a poll taken in the 60s where they would ask very adamant, racist Southerners, like, hey, how do you feel about this quote? And they would read a Martin Luther King Jr. quote to them. And like, it was overwhelmingly a positive response until they found out that it was MLK or a black person in general saying it. So we are absolutely talking about the reception from the artist, from the writer, from the poet. That is 100% what it is. And, so yeah, I think that you're hitting the nail on the head. We would not be having this same conversation under any other circumstance other than the fact that it was a woman of color who stood and took such a powerful stance and did something that challenged people to actually think about what our country really is.
Why don't we want our children to think about the idea of whether our country can be made better on a regular basis or not?
Because everything's fine. What are you talking about?
Greatest country in the world. Love it or leave it.
Everything's fine.
It reminds me of the dog in the middle of the flames, This is fine.
But we're all the dog. We're just they're like, it's fine. Nothing's happening. Nothing's burning around me.
Yeah.
Well, and where it fits in with tonight's topic so well is, are we in danger of becoming something as a nation that we don't want to be? There is a concept in social media called Godwin's Law from a writing of a writer named Mike Godwin that says, every time a topic starts growing on the internet, it will eventually be compared to Hitler's Germany. And so I think there is sort of this pressure to like, oh, you can't compare anything to Hitler and fascism because that's such an extreme and that's such a singular moment in history and all of these things. But I think it may be important for us to stop in this season and say, is it a bad analogy right now? And the other day I was reading a story about all of the laws that DeSantis pushed through in the last Florida legislature. And it's like, boom, 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 book banning, nationalism, marginalizing people, don't say gay, anti-trans laws. I mean, and you start to look at how Hitler slowly took power in Germany and started doing what he's doing to the point where he's then killing gay people and queer people and Jews and all that. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit scary that it's kind of the same path.
It's interesting that you asked the question, are we in danger of becoming a country that we don't want to be? Because I actually think this is just who the country has been. It's just the version of it has evolved every decade, right? I mean, speaking from like a Black woman in America and looking back at the things that my parents went through growing up in the South, things that the Black community are dealing with now, it's just a different version of what they dealt with back then. Mm-hmm. And we just hear about it more because of social media. So I honestly don't even think that we're in danger of becoming something. I think we are it. What I do think is that because of social media and because of the generation that's coming up now, the challenging of those ideals and that mindset is way more prominent than it probably was back then, because everybody has a platform and has a voice, and you're starting to realize, oh, people don't really want this to be this way, and they didn't have an opportunity to fix things.
And in the process of having a man of color in the White House, I think some of those things get ramped up, because then all of a sudden all these white cisgendered heterosexual folks like myself start to get very uncomfortable, and it swells to the point where we see the pendulum swing back so hard that it takes us to the 1850s. Like, I mean, Donald Trump is somebody who, and you can say he's the boogeyman and, oh, y'all can't get him out of your head and, blah, blah, blah. But I see the footprint that he made on our country, and empowering, like you're saying, Malynda, empowering all of those voices that have now social media and everything like that. They say that the JFK assassination was kind of like the multimedia moment that kind of stole the country's innocence, in a sense, right? Like, it's the first time we had this full-blown coverage, emergency coverage that was happening like 24/7 on TV. But also what the media outlets learned out of that was that the craziest thing draws the eyes. So like, I can raise my viewer numbers, now my clicks or my views, whatever it is. And so we have just been on this warp speed run up to who can get the most clicks, likes, views, shares. And it doesn't even really matter what you're saying. It's just, it's chaotic, right? So it's gotten so loud that that in and of itself is dangerous. But those ideas and stuff have already been out there.
Absolutely. But it's also not about being right. It's about being first.
Yeah.
And that's what I've noticed. And that's so dangerous. It's so dangerous.
Well, maybe what I'm, and I appreciate your perspective, and that may have been some of my privilege talking there, but I think where I see it a little bit differently is, maybe since Charles Lindbergh and the first America First movement, I don't know if we've seen one of our political parties so stridently trying to put themselves into power and irreversible power as a minority party. We know, like, Republicans have not won the popular vote for the presidency anytime since Gore won the popular vote in Bush's first term, then Bush won the popular vote in his second term, and the Republicans have never won a popular vote for president again.
Because they're not popular.
Right, and so they're actively
give it to them,
trying to put things in place to keep themselves as a minority party in power, and using the marginalization of people groups to do it. And in some ways, if you read some of the recent Republican Party history, in the 70s, they made an active decision to say, well, people of color, Black people are never going to vote for us, so we've got to go get the white South, or we're going to disappear as a party. And so they intentionally started using dog whistles and racist terms like welfare moms and Willie Horton ads, and became an openly racist Christian anti-abortion party. And Ronald Reagan overnight became a Christian anti-abortionist after being the California governor to sign our abortion law into place. And it seems a little bit different how strategically they're trying to put it into place into civil law.
Well, but my pushback on that, and maybe where I can see what Malynda is saying, is that now we're getting this swell because the popular side, or the more voted for side, is progressive, is inclusive. That in and of itself has not always been the case in the United States. The America first, white, Anglo, whatever, was what this country was founded on. So they didn't have to worry about doing crazy, white supremacy stuff, because that's just what was expected. As long as you were a white man landowner, like, you were the one with all the power anyway. Now that that's in question, they're fighting to get it back. So 100%. I think
good point.
Yeah. So that would be kind of where I see from both of y'all what the perspective here. But I think to Malynda's point is that it was built in our fabric. It's when that started getting pulled out that we started to see the swell of the attack.
Which is so funny, because those people will be the first people to say that white privilege doesn't exist, while simultaneously saying, I'm losing something because equality is happening. So clearly, that you have privilege if you're making that statement.
Yeah. And, a couple of years ago, the lieutenant governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, said out loud, Democrats want an open border so people of color will come and vote for them. I mean, he spoke the replacement theory out loud, that these people are coming to replace you, white folks. And if they do, they will treat you the way you've treated them. And so you need to be afraid and thus vote us into power.
But the country's so divided, and we need to unify, right?
and the fact that they're using Christ and Christianity as a basis to do this is beyond belief.
Well, I mean, but that is the Christian way. That's what they do. I mean, they use the name of Christ to go on the Crusades in the Middle Ages. They've used the name of Christ to enslave black people and to build a country on the backs of slaves and take all the credit for it. They've used Jesus to tell women to shut up and sit down and be submissive and not be able to vote until like the 1920s, and then not be able to have their own credit card until the 1960s. Like, this is what the Christians do. This is what the evangelicals do.
And they turned white so that they would be represented.
Yeah. yes. Because why? Because representation matters. Just
right. They fully understand why representation matters. They get it. Listen. This is such a oh my gosh. This is such a great one-liner. It's like, I don't know why y'all are so mad about Ariel being black, because y'all turned Jesus white. Literally, though. And Jesus was a person. Ariel is a fish. She's a fish.
Goddamn fish. I think we lost Paul. Oh no, Paul, where'd you go?
By a phone call. I just got taken out by a phone call on my iPad.
Yeah, somebody's like, "What are your former evangelical friends?" It's like, "What the hell are you talking about on there?"
I was going to say, though, don't you remember when Jesus said, "Blessed are those who stand beside King Herod for a photo op, thus standing against the Roman Empire"? Remember that great sermon that Jesus taught?
Yeah. So, I no, that's such a great point. I don't want to hear y'all say another thing about, we don't see color, because y'all went straight up and just turned Jesus into Fabio. Like, truly. Without a hesitation.
Jesus should not be a thirst trap. Okay, that's how y'all made him look.
Jesus shouldn't be a thirst trap.
That's funny. That's funny. So we I think need to be aware of this happening, so that we can say, I mean, I'm feeling like, at what point do you say that guy's on track towards fascism, and I'm not afraid to say it, and we've got to stand against him at all costs? So I definitely hear what you're saying, Malynda. It's not like the Dems don't have, blood on their hands through history and recent history. But right now, I would say the imminent threat is somebody like DeSantis or Trump being in the Oval Office and that filtering down to the local elections as well.
Oh, absolutely. But even with what you said, the difference is that I think Dems will admit it, and try to do better. The other side, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. None of that ever happened. You know what I mean? And then they're getting rid of the books that would actually prove that it did happen. So that is the difference. And that's what I appreciate. I do appreciate people trying to make things better. But I don't.
Well, I hear people all the time say it was Democrats that started in support of the KKK
because they don't read.
Right?
Yeah.
And I would say, so what's worse, the party that was racist in the after the Civil War, or the party that's racist today?
Yeah. At least some of us learned, But yeah, I think that's exactly right, and I think it is really fascinating, talking about like these books being banned and novels and history things and whatever. I think that the reason that this is so public now is not only because of social media, but also because there has been enough of change in our country that it has to go through checks and balances, that they can't just do it under the rug. For example, when I was in high school, I took Oklahoma history in elementary school, middle school, and high school. Like I had to have 1 year in each of Oklahoma history. I'm going to tell you all of the times that we talked about the Tulsa Race Massacre, and that is 0. I took Oklahoma history classes. I didn't know what Black Wall Street was until I was a grown-ass man. So I think that this is a tactic they have always used.
Absolutely. Which, by the way, it is the anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre today.
It is.
Oh, wow.
It is. Yeah.
31st. Yep.
Yep. So,
Jeremy, how did they treat the treatment of the indigenous populations in your Oklahoma history?
Well, at that point it was like, they celebrated, the land run, which was basically the government opening the border to, Oklahoma, which is where they had taken all these indigenous populations and just shoved them into this. Listen, Oklahoma is not that pretty, and there's a reason they gave it away. Okay. And like, we got some cool stuff, but it ain't like that. Like, they weren't like, let's send them to Colorado, or like,
oh my gosh.
So they picked the hottest, most dusty, flat place they could find. And they were like, that'll work. And then the issue is that, like, even in my history classes and growing up, like, the land run, when they opened the borders to settlers to claim their free land that they had already given away. So it's basically like taking a gift from somebody and handing it to somebody else. And that was celebrated. But there was this weird, like, navigation that happened of like being proud of our rich tribal culture and native culture here in Oklahoma, but then like not allowing the tribes and the leaders of those tribes to have their jurisdictions and to be able to work with them to put laws in place that was helpful for the tribes and for the nations. And so it is a very ugly history, and it continues to be.
Wow.
Do they still have high schools with indigenous mascots and such?
Yes, there is a high school just. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna put it on blast. There is a high school in Tecumseh, Oklahoma, named after Tecumseh, the Native American, who developed language and also developed the writing for that language, the alphabet and everything else.
Wow.
Incredibly intelligent, incredibly, well educated. The town that he is named after, their mascot is the Savages, and it is his face on all of their stuff.
Oh my gosh.
We were talking about a man who developed an entire alphabet to learn how to link between English and his native tongue. I mean, like, you were talking about a world changer, somebody who started writing in a native language. Like, that is that is something that none of us could even fathom, like how
Right.
to even begin to interpret and to do that. He did it, and now he is associated with being a savage. Wow. And that's today, 2023, my friends.
And so here's why not teaching this history is so dangerous. And I talk from time to time about the fact that I live like 3 blocks from a place where we took American citizens who looked Japanese and put them into prison camps around World War II. Mm-hmm. And we need to understand what horrible things we're capable of doing if we're not paying attention to what we're doing. We need to take history like what you're talking about in Oklahoma there, and Tulsa, the Tulsa massacre and Japanese internment, and say, no, we will never do this again, ever. And so when a president says we're going to put children in cages, we say, hell no, we're not. We will not allow that to be part of our history again, because we know we're capable of evil if we're not paying attention.
And that's another thing that I don't understand, when people make these decisions based on what curriculum they want their kids to be exposed to, what books they want to ban, whatever. A lot of the reasoning that they give is that they don't want specifically white children to feel bad about being white. It is never them realizing that if they know the ugly past, it's exactly what you said, Paul. We won't do it again, and we know how to do better. And specifically, I am a parent, but as a parent, I would think that you would want to set your child in the right direction, and not have them be mad at you when they get older. Be like, why the hell didn't you teach me this? Like, I didn't know any of this, right? Mm-hmm. So I think they're worried about the wrong things, and they also don't give kids enough credit to I don't think that they're going to approach history in that way, like, oh, I feel so terrible, like I feel terrible being white, I feel this, da 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 da. This is all the parents, because it's their own guilt and shame that they're trying to project onto their children, honestly.
Well,
in Germany, sorry, Jeremy, in Germany, every child is required to learn Nazi history every year of their education. And in high school, they're required to tour the Jewish prison camps, and they just had a big thing happen the other day. If you are flying Nazi paraphernalia in Germany, you go to jail. They, as a country, have said, we will never do this again. And the way we'll avoid ever doing it again is teaching our children this history over and over and over.
Yeah. I love this comment. I just wanted to mention that Titus said, why do parents always assume the white children will automatically identify with the oppressor? I think that's such a great question. And it goes to what I was saying. It's like they're projecting their own feelings because they may have those they have that oppressed. You know what I mean? That's what it is.
Yes. And that's so much more beautifully stated than what I was actually going to say just a second ago, in the sense of, like, I mean, that comment is gold, because that's what I was going to say. You don't want your kids learning. It's not that they don't want them learning to be guilty, it's that they don't want them to be empathetic towards people of color. And so just to the situation of civil rights and I don't know, that words just fell out of my head, but social justice. Like, they don't want their kids to be empathetic to those things, because if they were, then they know they'd be raising a bunch of woke children, quote unquote, a bunch of libs or whatever. And that's what education and learning from your history does, is it makes you a progressive thinking individual.
Yes, absolutely. I thought this was funny. I saw this reel a while ago that said the next time, they talk about how, like, Democrats were the ones that had slaves and blah, 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 blah. Challenge them by saying, oh, so Republicans freed the slaves, right? They'll say yes. So wasn't that a progressive idea at the time?
Oof.
And see how they respond to that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Because the conservatives made their own country.
Yeah.
Wow. Abraham Lincoln was woke.
Yeah. Yes, he was. Mm-hmm. Yes, he was. Just like Jesus.
Hello.
And part of what happens. So I use the trans female athlete issue here. So what Hitler did is took things that seemed logical. All of these queer people around Berlin, we don't like that seedy immoral stuff going on, and so let's ban that. Let's dehumanize these people. And it's all about morality and cleaning up the morality. And what's wrong with us doing things that bolster our view of ourselves as a nation and all of these things? And I'm the one that's going to lift this up. And you take this trans female sports athlete issue, and reasonable people are like, yeah, maybe it's not fair for a human being who has gone through male puberty to compete with women on a college level. It sounds reasonable. But what has that issue wrought now? We're banning gender affirming care, not only for children, but for adults in some states in our country now. We are dehumanizing 1.5% of our population out of this fairly reasonable sounding thing. And once you start using the civil code to dehumanize one group of people and say, we're the ones saving you from these immoral people, that becomes much easier to start to say, and this is the next group we're finding immoral. And now we're going to start to use the civil code against them.
That's my biggest question is who are they going to have left at this point? Like they're literally checking off the box of every single group to vilify in some way. They're just going to be by themselves.
That's what they want.
Well, let's see how fun that will be, because I think they're gonna realize real quick.
Well, I will say that the barbecues, in the spring, are gonna be really bland, like potato salad
Hot
with
dogs
raisins.
and hamburgers.
Yeah, hey, white people taco night.
And the question is, who are they coming after next? Just look at the McCarthy era. They will invent somebody to go after, and the old poem of, they came for the communist and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a communist. And so they'll just find a category of people, woke people, you name it. And those will become the next illegal people in our country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's scary.
It is.
All right. You want to hit a mid-roll, and we'll come back and maybe talk a little bit about what do we do about it? I don't know. Do we just sit around and be hopeful, or what do we do about it? Let's chat about that when we come back.
Are you loving Evangelicalish? Follow us to catch all the latest content and encouragement. You can check us out on TikTok by following @Evangelicalish, or subscribe on YouTube by searching Evangelicalish. That's evangelical with an ISH. And don't forget to catch our live streams each and every single Wednesday night on YouTube at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, and 6 Pacific. And now, back to the Evangelicalish podcast. Welcome back into the Evangelicalish podcast. Hey, if you are near Yakima, Washington, and that's a place, if you are near Yakima, Washington on June 10th, I'm going to be there for Pride Fest in Yakima. I'm going to be speaking about what it means to be an ally and what good allyship looks like, especially to our LGBTQI plus community, friends and siblings. And so the Yakima Pride organization is bringing me out there. And so if you are in the Washington State area, Central Washington State area, I'd love to say hi and get to meet you and maybe, hang out, enjoy some time together. So yeah, June 10th, Yakima, Washington, come hang out.
Wow, super cool. So we've laid out the issue. What do we do about it?
Yes.
We run screaming and say all is lost and hopeless.
We secede.
I had this one idea.
The North will rise again.
You know those little libraries do you guys have little libraries?
No.
Like people's front yards? You don't have little libraries?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I can't think of what they're called here, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
You don't have little libraries, Jeremy?
Listen, I'm in Oklahoma. Okay. We're ranked 48th in the country in education.
Oh, okay. So this actually probably won't work because the places that have little libraries are actually really progressive. So never mind. My idea is gone.
Exactly.
They wouldn't have little libraries where you are.
No.
Dang it. Well, do you know what they are?
Yeah.
Like little neighborhood.
They're little neighborhood libraries, and you can just go and exchange a book. And people can take
cool.
a book. It's just a free library.
Yeah.
So you put all the banned books in those free libraries, but no one's banning books in Los Angeles. So
Well, we burn books here. So if it ain't the Bible, we don't need it. Okay.
Man.
And so it's a beautiful place. Our current state superintendent of public schools is like the most Trumpy, like he makes Trump not look very terrible. Like he is an insane individual who is like attacking public educators. He called teachers in Oklahoma terrorists the other day for their woke ideologies. Yeah, it's going good. So no, we don't have little libraries.
Well,
We have little minds.
Not little. Michelle says you do have those.
Michelle says we do?
Yeah.
Well, not in my area, Michelle.
Well, yes, I would encourage people, if you can and you do have the little libraries in your area, you should have a banned book little library.
Yes.
Good idea.
Yeah, I think I'll set one up in my yard.
You should.
Right across the street from my neighbors who have I'll be back flag with Trump's face on it, 2024. So apparently Trump is the Terminator now.
Oh my God, stop.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
but I should set that up. Yeah, a bunch of banned books.
So my first solution, since Malynda and I are out here in California, is California secede from the Union. I am all on board with. We go to Oregon and Washington and Hawaii and say, hey guys, we don't have much in common with Oklahoma or Mississippi or Alabama. Why don't we just pack up our luggage and go? You know, that's
Your first solution. If only it were that easy.
Okay. Option 2.
Florida secedes. That would be my second option.
Yeah, Florida and Texas can have each other.
Yeah, they could just
in a weird, like, date your cousin kind of thing. Yeah, I love it.
So first I would say vote. My daughter, maybe I shouldn't call her out, but she expresses to me like, oh, voting doesn't do anything for us. We all voted in 2020 and we all voted in 2022, and it hasn't wrought what we thought we were told that it was going to do. But we do have to look and say, no, actually it did, saving the Senate from Republicans in 2022 and keeping the House from being overwhelmingly Republican still helps. And so still vote, even though voting doesn't seem to always have the return that we think.
But I also think people are too focused on like the big ticket elections.
Yeah.
I think you focus more on your local and regional. That's where you will actually start to see and truly feel the change. I mean, honestly, yeah, you vote for president, but you don't really see, or it doesn't make a difference as much as the local level voting does. So I would encourage your daughter to focus on that and really read about measures and props and everything that's coming up that will actually affect us in our day-to-day, because that is what's most important. And I feel like those are the things that people just kind of ignore because they think the president and, Congress are the biggest elections that we should be caring about. And I disagree with that.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think the Republicans have really done an effective job of taking over school boards and local community organizations and even putting things in place of like that could throw the 2024 presidential election into chaos that they were blocked by, little things like the Constitution from doing in 2020. And they're moving those silly roadblocks out of the way so that next time Arizona will be able to send up its own slate of electors just at the whim of the Republican legislator. And so, yes, not just voting for who's president or even your local congressional representative, but school boards and all these other things as well.
Especially school board, because with everything that's happening, there's a lot of power there.
And like Michelle says here, sometimes city council races, school board races, I mean, some of them you only have 300-400 people voting in those elections, and so your vote counts very, very much.
Yeah, and that's where you're exactly right. That is where you're going to see the biggest impact in what is happening inside of your local or state level legislature, which is going to impact your day-to-day life more than anything else. I mean, as crazy as we talk about Oklahoma is also home to a non-binary person of color in our state legislature. And so when voices collect and put their voices out there, what happens is that we start to see the radical change that we want to see at the national level. We start to see that start to shake at the local level, because your local level politics are like a speedboat. The nation is like the Titanic. I mean, you know, so it's going to take a lot of work. Yeah. Representative Maury Turner. You're going to have to work really, really hard to turn the ship nationwide, but we can do a little bit at the local level that's going to make quick and fast changes for ourselves.
Absolutely.
You know, when we had Brian McLaren on the show a while back, and he was talking about his book, Do I Stay Christian? He made the statement, and I thought it was a drop the mic moment of, if you're going to stay Christian, you can't stay silent. And so, yes, another thing is use whatever microphone, whatever platform you have, social media, discussions with people around you, flags in your front yard, I don't know, something to say, I stand with the people that are being marginalized by the Republicans right now. I stand against what they're doing. And again, this Godwin's Law thing, we're going to face flack for doing it. You know, Trump derangement syndrome, like you were saying, Jeremy, all of those things. And we have to say, maybe I am, because I am against dictators ever taking over the country. I am against minority race-based parties from having an overarching amount of power over people who really have their lives impacted by it. So speaking up and not being afraid when we face the barbs of doing so.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, by the way, Jesus said we would, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you speak up for the marginalized, they will hate you just like they hated me.
Yeah. Yeah. That is 1,000% exactly right. And that's ultimately, you know, they didn't crucify Jesus because he was another really great religious leader that fell in line with the rest of them. Like they didn't crucify him because he followed the law so well, or, you know, any of those things. They crucified him because he was a rebel. He was a renegade, and he was a social justice warrior. And they decided, and progressive. Yes, and progressive, you know, empowering women and Gentiles and people that were outside of their normal, you know, scope or whatever. And in that process, Jesus changed the world. And sorry, I'm getting like major feedback or something.
But let's make him white, so that's the only thing we focus on that makes us like him, and then forget about all that other stuff. Right?
Yeah.
That's their thought process.
Yeah.
And we lose the impact of the stories, I think, and we just need to remind ourselves again and again, the Samaritans of his era were the marginalized people that the religious people didn't think were worthy of favor or equality with them. And Jesus said, no, not only am I going to sit with the Samaritan, I'm going to sit with a Samaritan woman, and I'm going to tell the story of the Good Samaritan and make the Samaritan the hero of the story, and our good people of culture the heels. And I think, you know, at times we need to tell the parable of the good Islamic fundamentalist, or the parable of the good queer person or the good trans person, to like really poke our sensibilities and say, no, these are the people Jesus would have been sitting with.
Mm-hmm.
And you would passionately hate him for doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that the right-wing evangelical church would gladly crucify Jesus today if he were incarnate walking around on earth.
Absolutely.
Oh, they would not. First off, if he was allowed in, like they would kick him out of so many churches.
Well, if he was wearing a robe and no shoes, they would not let him in.
Yeah.
Oh man.
No shoes, no shirt. Must not be Jesus.
He doesn't look like me.
He does. Yeah. We got a picture of the Lord on the wall. It ain't you, buddy.
Oh my goodness.
There's a man outside the church, Pastor, and I'm not racist. I have black friends, but he's got dark skin and he says he's Jesus.
He says
They'd
he's Jesus.
never believe it.
Oh man, yeah. Well, golly, so I want to kind of answer the question as well. What do I think the solution is? I think the solution is a kind of a mixture of what we're talking about here. I think it is people who are still identifying as Christians or Jesus followers, or just people who resonate with Jesus's message of love and grace and kindness and mercy to the marginalized, the outcast, the disenfranchised, if all of those things. Okay. If we are going to make a change, then what we have to be willing to speak up constantly, speak up loudly, cut through the noise with good allyship for those of us who are allies, or being quiet and allowing voices of marginalized communities to speak out, and for us to just be supportive in those spaces and knowing which space we should speak in and which space we should listen in. Those things matter a lot. But at the end of the day, we also have to be willing to let it cost us some things. That's the thing. So my call to people who look like me, okay, white, heterosexual, cisgender men in this country, lay down your privilege and let it cost you some shit. Like, let it cost you a job. Let it cost you some professional opportunities. Let it cost you some relationships. Allow it to do that. And then when it gets really uncomfortable, realize that that's just the tip of the iceberg, because our friends in marginalized communities have been feeling discomfort times 1,000 just like that forever. And so it starts to get a little bit uncomfortable. Good. Remind yourself that at any moment you could stop talking and just like blend right back into the crowd. But our friends of color, they wear it everywhere they go. Our friends in the LGBTQIA plus community, they wear it everywhere they go. So for us to make a change, we have to be the change setters, but we also have to be willing to pay the piper. And that means that it's going to cost you some shit. It's going to hurt a little bit, and you're just going to have to get over that because the cause is worth it.
You better preach. Yes.
And you know what? That's so good, Jeremy. And I think there's sort of a tyranny. I call it the holy middle. People who are like, well,
yes,
we need to build bridges in conversation. You don't want to make people uncomfortable. They're not going to. There are times Jesus said, you guys, your son, your father is the devil. That's not pulling punches. That's not building bridges. He's saying you are flat out bad and wrong. And sometimes I think we get dominated with the, no, we don't want to be too radical on the other side. I think what we're saying here in essence is, with this Christian nationalism gaining steam and what we're seeing, it's absolutely time to be radical and speak up and say, this is not okay.
Couldn't agree more. But it's
okay.
What I've always found interesting with a lot of people that feel they're oppressed for some reason in this day and age, you know who I'm talking about. But when they say those things, and like you talk about the discomfort, like just think about, this is what marginalized groups have been feeling. If you are sitting into that, when will that light bulb actually like turn on? That's like, okay, I'm just like, okay, you feel this way. What have we been saying since the beginning of time? Get it now?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But like the switch, it's not turning on.
Mm-mm. No, there's got to be a light in that socket for it to work. You know what I mean? Some folks like the sharpest spoon in the drawer.
Man.
If you feel me.
I hesitate to, but I watched a special on Netflix from a comedian named Hannah Gadsby. I don't know if you guys have heard of her. Wonderful, brilliant Australian lesbian comedian. She calls herself that. So I'm repeating that. But she has a special on Netflix called Nanette, and I highly recommend it to everybody. And it is this idea of what you're talking about, Malynda, of marginalized groups have to take other people's anxiety onto themselves. Like, we'll carry your discomfort for you. And in her comedy routine, and she's very funny and very brilliant, she's talking about, so here's what comedy is I tell a story that builds anxiety for you, And then I relieve your anxiety by letting you laugh at me. I carry your anxiety. And so then when she gets to the end of her routine and she's talking about homophobia in her home area of Tasmania, and she's like, I'm not going to relieve your anxiety anymore. I'm angry and my voice is going up and I want you to know I'm angry, and I will not, white, cis, hetero male, relieve your anxiety anymore. And I don't mean to be a spoiler alert, I guess. And that's how she ends the routine. Like, I'm angry and I get to be angry, and I want you to feel the discomfort of me being angry. And yes, it's time, white boys out there, to feel the discomfort of people around us and recognize that everything has been built to keep us comfortable in every room that we go into.
Yeah.
And that's not what love is. That's not what Jesus set us up for. Love, like Jeremy said so well, costs us something. And if we're not willing to let it cost us something, we have no love, and thus we have no relationship with Christ at all.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful, and it reminds me of a conversation I had just recently, because I been going through some really challenging things in my day job here, which by the way, I've been officially cleared by the state of Oklahoma and the district because I was in the crosshairs of Ryan Walters, our state superintendent, for my woke ideology or whatever. But
and you got cleared.
Yeah, I got cleared, so that was good. Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to go to jail. So that's
good. You're not.
We're glad too.
Yeah. But I was sitting around with some friends talking about it. And I was like, guys, I'm so tired. Like, I've been fired from a church, lost all these friendships, and like these people hate me who used to say that they just had my back and loved me so much. And now I'm facing these issues that are like in the newspapers around here and stuff like that. And it was really, really challenging. And my friend says, he goes, yeah, you got fired from your job for speaking out, huh? And I was like, yeah. And so just talking about all the other things. And he goes, you know how many jobs that I didn't even have a chance to get because I walked in the room as a black man? And I was like, okay, like maybe I can suck it up and just deal with it, because to keep those things in introspection of, that fighting for things, if it's easy to attain, it's probably not worth fighting for.
Yeah.
And so we have to continue pressing on every single day. And but I do think that is fair, that our friends inside of those marginalized communities, they can be tired and loud and angry, and full stop right there. That's the end of the sentence. Like, we don't need like I think about people wanting Michelle Obama to like save things and whatever. And it's like, at what point are we gonna quit asking for black women to like step in and save us all the time, instead of just allowing ourselves to learn and be better? And I don't know. It's just there's so much there in my head, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, just wrapping up what both of you guys have talked about, you talking about costing something, and then how the anxiety and releasing it from the comedian that you were talking about, Paul. But what I find interesting is when you see a lot of these like pastors and worship leaders or people that are Christians have their quote unquote fall from grace, they disappear for a while and then they come back reborn and change, right? That's them creating the Jesus narrative for themselves, right? But the true like Christian ally costing you something, that's the Jesus narrative that we should be going after. Because that, you know what I'm saying? Like, that is giving up a part of you for other people. And that's what Jesus did. But on the other side, I feel like they're going about it the wrong way in order to have that, that Jesus narrative be a part of their life. I hope that makes sense. As that's just what came up in my mind as you were talking.
It's so good. And I would recommend everybody read the Amanda Gorman poem that
Hmm.
Malynda shared with us. And for me,
Yes.
and again, in danger as a white male of usurping MLK. And I'm not going to read it here. I was just looking at it, but reading Letter from Birmingham Jail on New Year's Day 2019, like rocked my core. And to read MLK in jail saying, "I'm so disappointed in the white moderate. Like I knew the Klan would do what they do. I knew the white council would do what they do. It's the white moderate. You guys that keep telling us, be patient, it's going to happen. That would prefer the absence of tension and passive peace to like real change and truth." And I just would say, hey, every white person out there, read that and read it multiple times and hear, white moderate, you're the problem. You're not the solution to the problem. Your desire to be comfortable and silent is the problem. Yes, Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump and those guys are the problem, but the Christians that are afraid, like my pastor friends who say, keep saying what you're saying, Paul, I can't say it. I want to say to those pastors, I'm done with that shit. Fuck that. Speak the fuck up if you're seeing something in your people, because it's not time to be a bridge builder and moderate. It's time to say the shit is shitty.
The moderate evangelical in America is the most dangerous thing. And partially because when you're a moderate evangelical, what you're really actually saying is that my conscience knows that these things are wrong, but my sympathy is with my bigotry. And so I'm going to keep my mouth silent because I don't really want to ruin what I got a good thing going on here and I don't want to mess it up. So I'll keep my privilege while also in the back of my mind knowing maybe we could be doing better. Right. That's horrific. And it is also the reason why that the moderate churches in the United States are the most dangerous ones, because they're the places that will bait and switch people.
Yes.
Like nobody shows up to Westboro Baptist Church on a Sunday morning like, oh, I wonder if they're going to love me and my LGBTQIA spouse member here, or, me and my black husband, or whatever the case is. Like, you already know that you know that you know. We don't have to guess at that. But like, people will show up at like Cornerstone Baptist Church or, wherever, like down on the corner, that says everyone's loved, everyone's welcome, and just beautiful things outside and a great building. And then people will show up and they'll begin feeling that marginalization or be pushed back on because their quote unquote lifestyle or, whatever the case is. And that's where people truly get hurt. And that's where people are disconnected so far from Jesus because church people are harmful in those spaces. Yeah. So moderate churches are the worst churches.
Because it's masked with all are welcome.
Yeah. It's what Jesus was talking about when he said wolf in sheep's clothing. Like they're just dressed up playing the part, but underneath there's a lot of fangs and they want to get them out as soon as they can.
Yes.
And men like Donald Trump are empowered by it because he knows he can say things like, Proud Boys, stand down and stand by. And the moderate is going to be like, oh, he's not really calling white supremacists to his defense. But now we know he was and has been. So vote, move, speak up, speak out, and be willing to let it cost you.
Amen.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right, let's finish on something a little bit different. We try to end on a lighter note, particularly with something heavy, but thank you all for the comments. And I really love that we're, getting down to the nitty gritty of this discussion. But I was hit with something this week of our family was going through some tough times, dealing with some hard stuff. And, in the old times, we would have said, well, let's pray that Jesus will help us. Let Jesus come help us. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, we can't do that now. and so I'm interested, what do you guys do when you need Jesus to come and bring you peace, and maybe we don't see prayer the same as we did, or we've deconstructed some of our spirituality? And I don't know exactly where both of you are on that spectrum, but Malynda, what do you do when you need like some supernatural connection to peace out there?
I mean, I do still pray, but it's a little bit more like real talk, like Jesus is my homeboy conversation. So like, I'm not like, doing it in this form of adoration. Like I'll literally be like, really, like we're having those conversations. And so that I do feel like someone is listening, and that brings me peace. And so, yeah, we still talk often. It's just very, very casual.
Yeah.
And does he answer back?
In ways, yes. There are sometimes you get those signs. You're like, okay, I get it. That's how I feel. Yeah. So I feel like I get a response sometimes.
Yeah.
How about you, Jeremy?
I feel similarly. I think that my prayer life has changed to be, kind of what the conservative evangelicals would say is just, not very respectful to God or whatever, because like I'm just talking to him like the way I normally would, which is probably going to be laced with some adult language. So I think I still believe in the power of prayer, as evangelical as that sounds, but I still see things that God does and interacts in my life, and I feel those things. I feel that moving, or I feel answers,
Yeah.
But a lot of that has also been tied with some better mental health coping mechanisms, like breathing and meditation, and just doing those kinds of things to treat myself well through that process. And so I think that there is definitely more of a hybrid for me, but I certainly don't sit down and I don't pray like in the most churchy way, Father God,
Yeah.
just come down, like all that stuff, and see how many verses I can quote in the middle of my prayer. Like, so, I mean, it's changed. It's more conversational.
That's really good, and that has my mind spinning a little bit, because I think sometimes prayer is an unhealthy coping mechanism for people. Like, oh, I'm really anxious, or oh, this really bad thing is happening, and so I'll pray and ask God to fix it. When instead I need to work on my own self in this, and maybe it's a conflict I created that I need to have healthy tools to deal with conflict with my family, friends, neighbors, rather than asking God to fix them. And part of what I was going to say is, I also believe I have wrestled with this, but I do believe there's something I call the divine or heaven. Like there is some version of a supernatural out there, and it exists out there, and it exists in here, and they can like communicate with each other. And so I at times I'm just like, okay, come on, wisdom. I need wisdom to come and connect with my own internal wisdom. And I'm finding that stirs me to not only then have wisdom come, but then to action. And so like, if I have a friend who's hurting, I won't just go, hey, I'm going to pray for you. Jesus, please, help them, or forget and not actually pray. But now it's like, oh, and I'm going to follow up and say, how's it going? And I have some feeling that through this whole process, I can literally send them love, energy, hope, and it can connect to them. They can feel it through this divine grid. And so I actually feel much more effective. And yes, I've lost a coping mechanism where, oh, God's going to take care of it and all things work together for good, so I'll just stuff it. And so it's a lot more messy, but I also feel it's a lot more powerful version of than what I did before.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it requires me to put feet to it.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly right. I think there's just like, I don't know, one of the most spiritual things I've ever seen in a movie is like, if you've seen Evan Almighty, Morgan Freeman plays God, right?
Because who else would play
because and Morgan Freeman is not God. I'm going to be disappointed, but just to be honest, like he seems like the perfect God to me. But there's this moment where the wife is like left her husband because he's everybody thinks he's crazy. He's building an ark. I mean, the premise of the movie is ridiculous, but Morgan Freeman shows up in this like bar with her and is like, she's like, I just wanted courage. I don't have enough this, that, whatever. I've prayed for it. And he's like, he hits her with this line of questions. He's like, do you think that when you pray for courage, that God gives you courage or gives you an opportunity to be courageous, And I think there's something about that. Like when we speak those things into the divine, into the universe, like, I want to be a difference maker. I want to impact this specific thing, or, give me the wisdom to handle that or whatever. I don't think that God just makes those things fall out of the sky like manna. I think it's more like opportunities come in front of you and you're going to have to put boots to the pavement a little bit.
Yes.
And so I just think that there's something really beautiful about being people who are not just like church pew Christians, but like, if we're going to profess to be people who love our neighbors, love ourselves, all of those things, well, then we are also people that are showing up on their behalf and standing alongside and speaking. So
love it.
Well,
by the way, Malynda, to answer your question of who else would play God but Morgan Freeman, I would say Octavia Spencer from the movie The Shack.
Yes, in The Shack, yes.
One of the best God characters ever.
Yes,
And in that vein, can I say you're my favorite host ever, Malynda?
Also, if it was John Goodman, I would feel okay about a John Goodman. I don't know why.
Tell me more on that. Why John Goodman?
He just seems like a big old teddy bear. I don't know.
What's his series, The Gemstones? All I can think of.
The Righteous Gemstones. That's why I was like, I can't get that out of my head. So
I didn't even think about that.
God.
I did not even think about
Gemstones.
All right, I take it all back. I take it back. This is not quite Tina Turner, R-E-S-P-C-T, but it's bad. It wasn't my best take. I take it back.
Oh my gosh.
Malynda, we've loved having you with us. Tell people where they can find you.
Absolutely. So you can go to my website, MalyndaHale.com, just to see all the things that I do and am involved in. And on Instagram and Twitter at Malynda Hale and TikTok at Malynda Hale Official. So please.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we'll link it in the liner notes. I should say for those listening into audio, that's Malynda with a Y, not an I. And
Malynda. And the song that Jeremy was talking about, it's called God and His Gun. It's on Spotify, music videos on YouTube, and it's on my Instagram page. So God and His Gun.
Yeah, so go stream that now. As soon as you get off this, you got homework. We don't ever give you a homework. You got homework now. Go add it to your playlist.
Tell me it's God and His Gun?
God and His Gun.
Which, if you
and
thought
the cover art,
yeah.
And the cover art, if you're looking on like Spotify, is Jesus pointing a gun at you.
Oh my God.
Oh.
I'll send it to you, Jeremy. I pissed a lot of people off when I made that song, and that was the point. Anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Again, you don't have to make people comfortable, right?
Yeah, I released a country song here a while back called the Brandon Song, and a bunch of rednecks downloaded it thinking that it was going to be a Trump anthem, and they were sadly surprised. So, but hey, thanks for them streams though.
And Michelle is mentioning here, Malynda, you do a podcast.
I know, I do too many things. I forget. Yes, my podcast is called #We Need to Talk. Thank you, Michelle.
Oh, it's #We Need to Talk. Okay, good. Got it. All right, beautiful stuff. Good show tonight, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Do us a favor. Go follow us on evangelicalish.com. It's just $4.99 a month, and you can join the chat board, get some exclusive access. All of those good things are there. And the biggest thing, it just helps support what we do on the podcast. April will be back next week. We're super excited about that as well. So we'll be same time, same crazy channel. If you ever want to watch us live, if you're an audio only person, Wednesday nights, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, you can watch us live on YouTube. That's youtube.com/evangelicalish, and on those podcast platforms. Leave 5 stars, write a review, tell people why they should be listening. Let's grow the conversation. Let's Otherwise, for Malynda and Paul, I'm Jeremy. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and we will see you next week.
Good night, all.
Bye.